Well, good evening. I'm leaving work, headed back to where I live. Kathy's not with me right now, but I'll see her in about 45 minutes, or maybe I'll see her come onto the live stream. But I wanted to, I started listening to the news this morning. Well, I mean this afternoon, when I was caught in traffic on the way to my job. And I was hearing talk about the way that the Colorado Supreme Court ruled against allowing Trump to be on the primary ballot for president. And I learned later that it was a 4-3 vote in favor of getting him off the ballot. And that I think another 4 states were doing the same kind of thing. And they were basing it on insurrection in Amendment to the Constitution 14 that happened after the Civil War. That the reason for that was to stop Confederates from switching parties in order to get elected to political office when they had just started an insurrection, a true insurrection, not a made-up insurrection with no weapons involved. There's always, in all history that humans have, every insurrection that had some kind of violence associated with it, with guns or whatever. Or assassinations or something. Anyway, in the beginning of January 6th, when they started the very same day that this was being reported, a number of the media groups that I was switching between to learn about what was going on were using the word insurrection. And yet the clips that I was seeing, because there was one guy who was posting clips of inside the Capitol, told a different story. And showed collaboration with the Capitol Police and you know, the whole list of things that showed that it was a setup. It was an internal job. It's like we saw with the event that was labeled "99999" with an 11 at the end of it. And the reason I'm being a little cryptic about that is so this video doesn't get deleted, because I've had videos deleted. Most of them that they were saying was because of medical community guidelines, because I was, even well before the big C, or whatever you want to call it, the disease that took over the country, mean, the response of the government to it took over the country. I already knew that was coming. I mean, I didn't know that exactly was coming. I already knew that there was a major effort afoot to render what can be called alternative medicine disallowed. And even Tiendo talked about that in one of the last audio tapes on how there was a movement afoot then in the 80s to try to require people to get a prescription for herbs and vitamins and Tiendo were clear that they also were well aware of the corruption of the government. And at one point, they were hoping that Ross Perot would get elected because they thought maybe having a business person in office would help the country. And so I remember when Trump came along, even though he was a brash, I didn't trust any Republicans at all at that time. I didn't know that I couldn't trust any Democrats either, really. Not because some of them aren't good people, decent people, but because they can easily be corrupted. And you don't even know they're corrupted because they think that they're doing the right thing for some other reasons. But this is the time of the revealing. That's the true definition of the word apocalypse. Reveal. Actually reveal again. Because it's not the first time that something was revealed. I think kind of the start of the apocalypse was the next level staged events that we talked about in the last live stream as UFO crashes, which I didn't mention. That though later, after he and T had talked about it in 1984, years later, Doe said that he felt like some of the UFO crashes were stimulated by the lower forces, stimulated by the space aliens and or government to appear to be the same as the ones that the next level stimulated on purpose. Like he said, they weren't accidents. The next level doesn't have accidents like that, unless they wanted to look like an accident. And maybe that's what happened by crashing. Because as the humans would say, is how can beings that can somehow get to Earth from who knows how far away and have spacecrafts that can defy gravity and defy the speeds of anything that humans have in a large degree and stop on a dime at incredible speeds. How can humans, people with that kind of technology somehow crash? so they came up with that theory that it was because this alien group never encountered radar. And so the radars messed up with their navigational systems. When the truth is that the reason humans have radar is because the next level gave them the ability to understand that technology and use it. But of course, humans don't know that, by and large, because they tend to only believe what they can see, and everything else is considered to be superstition. And even the things that they can see, they can't see, really, because their interpretation of what they see is limited to what their potential is to believe is true, believe is real. So even if they saw a spacecraft like on TV or something, Tiendo talked about this, how let's say the next level did stage a pickup that was visible to humans and even was broadcast on TV channels of the class leaving. The humans, what they would be saying, they would have all different opinions about it, of course, and some would ignore it completely. Some would have their minds blown, and it might affect them in a negative way to where they could even die from the realization that space aliens exist, or whatever they think about as space aliens, because they wouldn't think of it as God, because they've already been brainwashed to think that God is a spirit. And that meant that God was etheric to them, even though they didn't really understand what that meant, because they didn't have the technology to measure spirits and technologies to actually define a soul, until Tiendo came along and gave some concrete examples of what a spirit was and what a soul was, which that information was in the ether with Tiendo's minds to some degree, but they probably held back some of it. Now I understand better now why. Because if Tiendo were able to bring their mind that knew completely, without a doubt, exactly what a spirit was and what a soul was, then the fact that the literal scientific fact that their information, their database, the equivalent of a genetic structure, because there is some equivalence with that, it's a structured body of information. Tiendo used to compare it to being a computer chip. That information would be, humans would be able to pick up on it. But they would still be limited to what they can pick up on according to what kind of database they had already built or was built for them through their ancestors and through the upbringing of that vehicle, that body, in this lifetime, that they're limited to. It's like you can't understand how to do trigonometry until you understand how to do addition and subtraction, because it's all going to be applicable. And it's the same thing with the truth about our reality. We cannot understand a lot of things until we begin to understand the basics. And we're not going to understand the basics if we don't look for them. don't seek them out. And people do seek them out. Wow, 4 cop cars? Hope they don't turn around and come to me. I'm a good boy. Well, maybe it didn't slow down enough. I don't see any of them coming this way. Even if I do, I'm going to be on the interstate in a minute here. I think I'm okay. I mean, it was a 60 zone there. I think I was going 65. So I don't think they're going to bother with me. But I did get a speeding ticket a couple weeks back, going 59 in a 45 zone, which they want $264 or something like that from me. Which, you know, that could be like 3 days of work. It's so unfair. It's so authoritarian. When almost nobody goes the speed limit that has someplace to go, unless it's a school zone or something, like around town. I go, you know, at the most 5 miles above the speed limit. But the roads are so bad in the cities that you don't want to go any faster than the speed limit. You could break up your car. Anyway, so the reason I'm, you know, like I post things that Jimmy Dore says and the people that are the group The Hill and reference some of the things that Joe Rogan talks about and Russell Brand, because he's reporting on this thing about Trump as well, being eliminated from the primary ballot in Colorado. That is, and the way that Russell Brand is talking about it, and Jimmy Dore are talking about it, I think they're right on. They're not the only ones talking about it. There's others. And I think they're right on the money pretty much with the direction that things are going. Now, I knew that this was the case long ago, that we were moving into more and more anarchy. See, it doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, there was some poll that Russell Brand was saying, he was posting on his video on YouTube about this. I was asking people the likeliness of a civil war in the United States. Now, there's a cop behind me that just got off the road. And there were people going, I was going 75, and there were people passing me, and he was behind us all. And I was just waiting in the middle, maybe because he doesn't want to go too far away. I don't know what the reason is. But he had his lights on. But he didn't pull anybody over. I don't know what's going on with that. I didn't even see him coming up. But I guess it's the holiday time, and so they're told to go out there and make some money. You know, they think they're keeping everybody safe, when that's rarely the case. What it comes to speed on the freeways. I mean, it's not that hard to drive on the freeway and be safe. Anyway, so I remember when the last election where Biden got elected, well, it was before the actual November 4th, or whatever date it is, 4th I think it is, or 11th. I know my vehicle's brother's birthday is the 11th, so it's probably not that day. I think it was the 4th, right, his election day? Anyway, I might have that wrong. It's just the kind of thing that I sometimes get mixed up about when numbers are involved like that. Anyway, but I remember that there was the periodical. It was called The Atlantic, and there was also a group of individuals that were, working for the so-called Democratic Party. That's not very democratic. I'm not saying the Republicans are any more democratic, but they're all like Ralph Nader said in 2000 and 2004, that there's only corporations now. It's not government anymore. I mean, there's no parties anymore, really. The parties are all just for the game, for the most part, because all the important things are pretty much voted on by the majority. Like, all of the defense spending is almost always voted on. I mean, the Republicans now are blocking the defense spending for Ukraine and Israel, right? But that's not because they want less defense spending. That's because they want to put defense spending into something else, like build up more armaments and things like that. So they're no better. And so I was watching that happen, and during that time, there was this group of people that formed that was saying that one way or the other, they were going to have their agenda go forward, regardless of whether Trump or Biden got elected. And because they couldn't imagine Trump being in power again, because after all, he wasn't playing ball to the degree that they wanted him to play ball. He could stand in the way of things. And he did. He stopped money funding the Paris Accords. I don't know if he actually stopped funding to NATO, But he certainly said that NATO needs to provide more funds for their own defense. He didn't start any wars, foreign wars. It seems like he was trying to do the things that he campaigned on. He wanted there to be available alternative treatments to disease. He didn't believe that automatically injecting children, babies, with a whole bunch of different vaccinations in a short period of time was healthy. But I'm not against vaccinations. I never was. I'm just against a mandate from the government to tell us what we can or cannot put into our bodies. The Next Level made us with free will for a reason. And anybody that tries to take that free will away from us is on the opposite side of the Next Level's team. That's why I think when TNDL came public, they stopped the draft into the Vietnam War. I know because I got a high lottery number when Nixon was in power, and my number was so large that it was virtually impossible that they would call me into the draft. And if I hadn't received that, I was going to Canada. I had already decided that in my mind, and then I ended up moving to Canada anyway, even though I didn't have to. But one of the things that Jesus said was that he had many things to share with us, or share with the people then, that they were not able to bear at this time. But upon his return, those things would be revealed. And if you search on the word reveal in the New Testament, there was one usage of it in Luke that talked about something that wouldn't happen until the revealing of Jesus had taken place. I forgot what the exact wording was, but I believe that was the gist of it. And the revealing of Jesus was the revealing of Doe being here. because he was the same soul that was in that vehicle named Jesus. And he revealed that in the 90s as a fact. You can read the document, Undercover Jesus Services Before Departure, in the Heaven's Gate book. And Jesus is in quotes because Doe knew that it wasn't the body of Jesus that was coming back. Although in Revelation 19, it talks about him coming back with his armada of spacecrafts. And that it was the one whose vehicle was dipped in blood, was baptized with blood, which seems to be a reference to Jesus, saying that the one who comes back and is riding the white horse, which in that context, horse in Revelation 19 was a spacecraft, because they described his body differently. Where Revelation 6 describes someone who's riding the white horse, to where the horse in that context appears to be the human vehicle that he was riding. He took over. He trained to be his instrument to operate in the human kingdom. Which you can see the word horse is used in the book of Zechariah. Which was before Jesus. Where also Zechariah talks about the two. And defines them as two lampstands. The same way that it's described in the book of Revealing, the book of the Apocalypse, the book of Revelation. And so right now, more and more is being revealed of what's true. And it's upside down, as Jimmy Dore was pointing out, and I don't know why, I always forget his name, Russell Brand was pointing out. That, and Jimmy Dore says it pretty directly by saying that whatever they tell you is the case about their opponent is what the case is about them. They're actually telling you what they are like and what they're going to do. And they're claiming that Trump is going to be another Mussolini, another Nazi, Hitler, a dictator, and yet they are dictating. And that's evident by this court case. Because another thing that was talked about by this group of people that said that they had 5 plans that they were going to put into motion as needed if Trump is elected president. And one of them was that they were going to break up the states so that there'd be another country. And the country would kind of look like the blue states. California would be its own country. Now, I know that's been talked about for a long time. Vermont has a movement like that. Texas has a movement to become sovereign from the United States. But all the states receive money from the feds, which I think was also the same kind of thing in Rome. Because the United States is actually like the new Rome. That's why they're using Roman numerals on their money. And there's other things that, there's a whole list of things that you could see relationships with the old Rome. But one of the reasons why the Roman Empire fell, from my limited study of that, if I understand it correctly, was because they spread themselves too thin. The same way the Nazis did when they went to Russia. And they were killed by the weather and their supply lines being broken. So they were starving and they were eating rats and stuff to survive, the soldiers. Well, the soldiers always were cannon fire by the rich and famous. And it's not any different now. But I don't know what's going to look like if, let's say the federal Supreme Court rules the way they think they're going to rule, and require them to not have to put Trump on the ballot. What does that do to the electoral system? I mean, because to write Trump in, there has to be some laws passed to allow people to write in Trump. It's not that easy, I don't think. I just heard that talked about. So this is a big can of worms. But it's evidence that they're going to do anything it takes. I mean, if Trump ended up getting elected, despite everything they do, they're going to challenge the vote. They're going to probably do the same things that Trump wanted to do. And they might even, they might actually do things that they were accused of doing. When some of the things they were accused of doing in the last election, I was wondering sometimes whether they were trying to make it look like they were manipulating the election, so that when the Republicans or whatever of each state saw those things happening, they would be all up in arms about it, and then they'd be able to shoot them all down. Like, even by saying that, that video wasn't what you thought it was, and then getting rid of the evidence at the same time, which they did. They were all scuttling to do that by, getting rid of their voting records and scrubbing the information on the different voting machines, because they had the owners of the makers of those voting machines in their hand, which they had also during previous elections to some degree. So what's their end result of that? For a lot of people, it's total confusion. A lot of people, it's total confusion, and they don't know which end is up, which end is right, which end is wrong, which who is being truthful and who is not. And they're going to just basically be choosing sides and sticking to that choice and being willing to fight for that choice. Well, they should have that choice. I don't think anybody should not have the choice, because you can choose, according to T and Do, to become as rotten as somebody wants to become, even though they don't think they're rotten. They think they're doing the right thing. They think they're maybe saving the world from calamity, or saving the world from these evil space aliens that other people are saying is the kingdom of God coming to recycle. But they're saying are evil space aliens from Draco, the serpent people, the reptilians. Everything's being spun. What the hell is that? Wow. I don't know if that was a plane I saw just now, because it did look like it was going too slow for a... Maybe it's just a light that I'm seeing through the trees. Okay, I'm home. I don't think I'm going to continue with this. Stream. Doesn't look like there's anybody on it. So, good night, folks.